In this 1.1 million square foot warehouse in Fort Worth, Texas, millions of dollars worth of goods are stockpiled ahead of potentially sweeping tariffs expected to be levied against China, Mexico, and Canada.
This is a import-heavy economy. Most of what we consume comes in from Southeast Asia and China. A lot of those goods might be coming in and have a tariff slapped on them.
Front-loading is a tool companies use to buy and store their goods in advance, in this case to avoid pricey tariffs. Big brands like Walmart and Columbia Sportswear are executing this strategy. Walmart's imports from China rose 33% from 2023 to 2024. Columbia Sportswear imports went up 50% during the same time and jumped over 80% during the March to December period. At the same time, container imports from China to the United States have surged.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know we love to take a ton of sources and kind of pull out some interesting stuff.
Absolutely.
And today we're going to be talking about global trade.
Yep.
Specifically how the U.S. is navigating all these recent major policy shifts. We got a whole bunch of reports and some pretty wild footage. Even got a peek into how big companies are reacting to this stuff. This is going to be about way more than just tariffs.
Right.
We're talking about how these decisions made by governments can impact, the price of your new phone, the roads you drive on, stuff like that.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating about this particular moment in time is that we're seeing these policy changes play out, in real time.
Yeah.
And businesses are having to scramble to adapt.
Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. You've probably at least heard about these tariffs on goods coming in from China, Mexico, Canada, right? Well, one way businesses are trying to get ahead of this is by doing something called front-loading.
Front-loading is essentially this mad dash to import and stockpile goods before these potential tariffs kick in. It's like they're trying to lock in lower prices now to avoid just this massive price hike later.
It's like they know it's coming. They're like, all right, gotta get it in now.
Exactly.
And we actually got some incredible footage from this gigantic warehouse in Fort Worth, Texas.
Oh, wow.
And it is bursting with goods. I mean, you can just see the scale of this front-loading frenzy.
Yeah, it really underscores the magnitude of the situation. These companies are pulling out all the stops to import these goods while they still can at these prices.
And we're not just talking about some niche products, major brands that you probably shop at Walmart, for example.
Right.
Their imports from China have spiked 33%.
Wow.
Columbia Sportswear up 50%. I mean, these are huge numbers.
Yeah, and it's all fueled by the uncertainty swirling around, President Trump's proposed tariffs. These companies are essentially making a calculated gamble to protect themselves from, the potential fallout of this.
Right. Okay, so that's interesting. But here's where it gets even more interesting and potentially more expensive for you.
Okay.
This front-loading frenzy isn't really a fair game for everyone.
I imagine not, no.
Yeah.
Larger companies like Walmart, they have a distinct advantage in this situation. Think about it. They have the resources to charter entire cargo ships. They buy goods in bulk and get lower prices, and then they store it all in these massive warehousing networks.
Right. I mean, it's like a whole different league that they're playing in.
Yeah.
Our sources actually highlight the smaller business,
Okay.
Deer Stags. It's a men's shoe company. And their president, Rick Muscat, he's facing this pretty nail-biting scenario. 200,000 pairs of shoes, potentially stuck at sea, facing a mountain of unexpected tariffs.
It really illuminates, the disparity between these big players and, these smaller businesses that just don't have the same financial firepower to navigate this kind of economic storm.
Right, it makes you wonder, okay, so the big companies are stockpiling, the small companies are struggling. Where does that leave the average person?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because these tariffs aren't just abstract numbers on a spreadsheet. They have a very real impact on what you pay for everyday goods.
Right. And the sources spell it out pretty clearly. They get passed down through the whole supply chain, from the folks importing the goods to the stores selling them, and then finally right onto you, the consumer.
Right.
So think about it. That new phone you've been saving up for, the one that's like $700 right now, will tack on another $50 thanks to tariffs.
It really underscores, the interconnectedness of our global economy and how these tariffs can trigger these price increases on everything from, the avocados you put in your salad to the car you drive.
So maybe you're thinking, okay, I get it. Prices might go up, but what's the big deal? Well, hold on tight because we're about to dive into the impact on a key U.S. trading partner,
Yeah.
Mexico. And trust me, the stakes are high.
Yeah, Mexico's more than just a neighbor.
Yeah.
You know, it's the U.S.'s largest trading partner. They imported just a staggering $466 billion worth of goods in 2024 alone. I mean, disrupting that flow of goods and services is going to have huge consequences for both countries.
Yeah, I mean, think about the auto industry, for example. Mexico manufactures about 3.5 million vehicles every year, and 76% of those are shipped directly to the U.S. So if that trade gets disrupted, it's not just about cars becoming more expensive.
Right.
It's about, jobs, entire industries.
The ripple effects.
Yeah.
And it gets even more complex.
Yeah.
Because Mexico isn't just going to sit back and take it. They've already signaled that they're ready to hit back with retaliatory tariffs of their own.
It sounds like we're teetering on the edge of a potential trade war. But before we jump to conclusions, let's shift gears a little bit
Okay.
and look beyond the headlines. What are the less obvious costs of all this?
Yeah, that's where things get really fascinating. Because tariffs don't just impact prices. They can actually discourage companies from investing in new ideas and technology.
Why is that?
Because uncertainty and higher costs make businesses very hesitant to take risks.
So it's like putting a brake on progress.
Precisely. And remember that footage of the warehouse? Packed to the brim with those infrastructure components. Well, guess what? Those components are about to get a whole lot more expensive.
And what does that mean for everyday people?
It means everything from fixing bridges to building new roads is going to cost more. And that cost ultimately trickles down to taxpayers.
It's kind of crazy to think about how much these tariffs can actually impact our wallets. But what about the human side of all this? It's easy to think about, the numbers. But these are policy decisions that have, real-world consequences for people who are just trying to make a living.
It's crucial to remember that there are faces and stories behind every statistic.
Yeah.
Let's think about Rick Muscat and Dear Stags again. For him, this isn't just about numbers on a balance sheet. This is his family business, his employees, their livelihoods. He's facing this really agonizing dilemma.
Yeah, it sounds like he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, he has to keep his business afloat. But then on the other hand, these tariffs could make his shoes so expensive that no one can afford them.
Absolutely. And he's not alone. There are countless small businesses across the country in the same boat, lacking those vast resources of a company like Walmart to weather this kind of economic storm.
It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a reminder that we can't just focus on the macroeconomic picture. We need to think about the individuals and families who are directly impacted by this stuff.
Absolutely. Putting a face to the statistics makes us understand, the human cost of these tariffs and the ripple effects they create.
It's easy to get caught up in the political rhetoric, but we got to remember that trade policy isn't just about numbers. It's about real people's lives, the choices they make, the challenges they face, the dreams that they hold for the future.
And those dreams can be profoundly affected by decisions made not just in Washington, but in Beijing and Mexico City as well. It really underscores the interconnectedness of our world and how actions in one country can have these far-reaching consequences.
Speaking of consequences, we were talking about Mexico's threat of retaliatory tariffs earlier. Let's unpack that a little bit more.
Okay.
What would happen if they decide to hit back?
But Mexico's economy minister has issued a pretty stark warning. He estimates that a 25% tariff on Mexican exports could wipe out up to 400,000 jobs, particularly in the auto industry.
Wow, that's a lot. And wouldn't that also hurt the U.S. economy, especially considering how closely tied our manufacturing sectors are?
Absolutely. It wouldn't just be a blow to Mexico. It would disrupt that entire integrated North American supply chain, driving up costs and potentially leading to shortages of goods on both sides of the border.
It's like a chain reaction. One country raises tariffs, another one retaliates, and pretty soon everyone's caught in this downward spiral.
And remember, it's not just Mexico we need to consider. China has also hinted that they're prepared to respond with their own set of countermeasures. They've learned from past trade disputes and are ready to use their economic leverage.
So with all this talk of retaliation, are we headed towards a full-blown trade war?
It's a very real possibility. And the consequences could be far-reaching. A trade war could disrupt global supply chains, leading to shortages and price hikes on a wide range of goods. It would be like this. Major economic earthquake, shaking the foundations of global commerce.
And it wouldn't just be about economics, would it? Wouldn't a trade war also strain, diplomatic relations, and increased geopolitical tensions around the world.
You hit the nail on the head. It could create this climate of distrust and animosity, making it even harder to address, pressing global challenges that require cooperation, like climate change or cybersecurity.
Man, that paints a pretty grim picture.
Yeah.
But is there a way out of this, impasse? Is there an alternative to this, tit-for-tat escalation?
The key lies in diplomacy and negotiation. Countries need to come to the table, engage in good faith discussions, and find common ground. It's not going to be easy, especially in the current political climate, but it's really the only way to avert this destructive trade war. That would leave everyone worse off.
It sounds like we're at a crossroads, the decisions made in the coming months, not just by the U.S., but by all the major players in the global economy, are going to have a profound impact on the world we live in.
Absolutely. This isn't just some theoretical debate happening in ivory towers. These are real-world choices with real-world consequences for businesses, workers, and consumers all around the globe.
Man, it can feel a little overwhelming, when you think about these big global issues, like a trade war. What can we even do, as individuals, when it comes to something like this?
It's true. These challenges can seem really daunting, but that doesn't mean we're powerless. We can stay informed about what's happening, engage in the, thoughtful conversations with friends and family, and let our elected officials know where we stand.
So we can make our voices heard, even on a global stage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Our elected representatives are there to represent our interests, and they need to hear from us on issues like trade policy. But there's another powerful tool at our disposal, our wallets.
Okay.
We can choose to support businesses that align with our values.
So you're saying we can actually vote with our dollars?
Precisely. We can choose to buy from companies that prioritize fair trade practices, sustainable production, and ethical treatment of workers. Every purchase we make is a chance to support businesses that are trying to do the right thing.
That's pretty empowering to think about. Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into this crazy world of tariffs and trade, I'm walking away with a mix of concern and hope. Concern because the decisions being made right now have the potential to reshape the global landscape, but also hope because we can all play a role in shaping that future.
I share that sentiment. It's a time for vigilance, holding our leaders accountable for the choices they make, and for optimism, believing that we can work together to create, a more just and equitable global trading system.
Well said. And to all of our listeners out there, we encourage you to keep exploring these issues. Read, research, discuss, and don't be afraid to ask tough questions. In a world that's, increasingly interconnected, the choices we make today, big and small, will ripple outwards and shape the world of tomorrow. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.